Carol, after 18 years, we're doing away with your department, Raymond stated nonchalantly as he leaned back in his leather chair. Budget cuts. Wrap things up by Wednesday. His tone was as indifferent as ordering a sandwich. I sat across from him, nodding steadily. I completely understand. The wave of relief on his face was almost amusing. He had anticipated tears, outrage, or at least some form of negotiation. Instead, I stood up, smoothed my skirt, and exited his office with dignity. My name is Carol Jennings, and in my 58 years, I have learned a crucial lesson. Patience yields results. For nearly 20 years at Hollowgate Systems in Seattle, Washington, I transformed the compliance department from a solo operation into a team of 15 dedicated professionals. We acted as the company's immune system, preventing problems before they could arise and proliferate. When I joined, the company was modest, ambitious, and cutting corners. I enacted strict protocols, trained employees, managed growing budgets, and kept us out of legal trouble. We aided Hollowgate's transition from a regional player to a reputable name in data security. Our department saved the company millions in potential fines and lawsuits. Yet Raymond Shaw dismissed us with less thought than canceling a magazine subscription. Returning to my desk, I opened a drawer and looked at the small voice recorder I had kept there for 3 years. I stopped today's recording, the last one I would need. Then I picked up my phone and texted Janine Brooks, our head of legal. Need to meet Wednesday. Confidential, it's important. Her reply was immediate. My office, 10 a.m. 3 years ago, Raymond had been brought in during a management shuffle. Fresh from a competitor with slick back hair and MBA jargon, he immediately pushed for streamlining and efficiency. To him, compliance was just bureaucratic red tape, an unnecessary barrier to higher profits. Initially, it was minor things. Skipping required refresher trainings, hasty approvals without proper review. Then came falsified signatures on compliance documents, backdated certifications, and direct orders to bypass established protocols. When I confronted him, his response was always the same. Just make it happen, Carol. Nobody gets hurt. Everybody wins. What Raymond never grasped was that my career in compliance wasn't driven by a love for bureaucracy. I was committed because I had seen the consequences when companies prioritized short-term profits over long-term integrity. Jobs were lost. Lives were shattered. Sometimes people were genuinely harmed. So I documented everything. Every directive to cut corners, every falsified report, every potential breach, meticulously organized and backed up in triplicate, knowing that eventually Raymond would target the department he viewed as an impediment. And now he had. Growing up in a blue-collar family in Tacoma, I learned early that the world doesn't reward good people just for being good. My father worked 40 years at the shipyard only to be laid off 6 months before his pension would have vested. The company restructured, and decades of loyalty suddenly meant nothing. He never recovered from that betrayal, spending his remaining years bitter and broken. They'll smile while they stab you in the back, Carrie, he told me. Always keep your eyes open. I carried that lesson throughout my career. When I joined Hollowgate Systems in 2006, it was a promising company with sound products but lax operations. The founders were brilliant engineers who needed someone to build infrastructure around their innovations. I became that person. Year after year, I expanded our compliance framework as the company grew. I hired the right people, developed training programs, and created systems to protect both the company and its clients. The previous CEO, Thomas Miller, recognized our value and fully supported our work. Carol runs the department that keeps us all employed, he used to say at company meetings. When she talks, we listen. But Thomas retired 5 years ago, and the new leadership had different priorities. Quarterly results, market share, relentless growth. Raymond Shaw epitomized this new direction. The first sign of trouble was during a quarterly review in 2021. Raymond interrupted my presentation on updated data security requirements. Carol, these extra steps are killing our deployment schedule, he said, barely concealing his frustration. Our competitors aren't doing all this. We need to be more flexible. After the meeting, he pulled me aside. Look, I respect what you've built here, but times are changing. Sometimes we need to interpret regulations creatively. That night, I bought the voice recorder. Over the following months, Raymond's creative interpretations became increasingly audacious. He instructed teams to release products before finishing security checks. He made my staff falsify training records for audits. He personally approved compliance certifications without conducting the necessary reviews. Each violation was added to my growing file. I wasn't being spiteful. I was safeguarding myself and my team. If anything went astray, Raymond would make sure we took the blame. I'd seen it happen before. My department became his outlet for frustration. He repeatedly slashed our budget, blocked my staff's promotions, and excluded us from key meetings. Nevertheless, we persevered, striving to maintain standards despite mounting pressure. I never anticipated he would dismantle the entire department. That was bolder than I thought Raymond would dare, but I was ready nonetheless. On Tuesday morning, following Raymond's bombshell announcement, the compliance department was in disarray. My team gathered in the conference room, faces reflecting varying degrees of shock, anger, and fear. 18 years and this is how they treat us, said Vivian, my deputy, who had worked with me for 12 years. No warning, no transition plan. It's unbelievable. What about our ongoing projects? Asked Thomas, our newest team member. The ISO certification is due next month. Who's handling that? I let them express their frustrations for a few minutes before bringing the room to order. I know this is difficult news and it's completely unfair, but right now we need to focus on documenting everything and ensuring a smooth handover. Handover to whom? Vivian asked bitterly. They're dismantling everything we've built. I met her gaze firmly. Just because they're eliminating our department doesn't mean the work vanishes. Someone will have to assume these responsibilities, and they'll need our documentation. Although unconvinced, the team trusted me. We spent the day organizing files, creating process guides, and preparing handover notes. Throughout it all, I maintained a calm exterior, though internally I cycled through my own emotions. Disbelief, then fiery anger, and ultimately cold resolve. During lunch, I slipped away to meet with Philip Johnson from IT Security. He'd been an ally over the years, often supporting me in disputes with Raymond. I heard what happened, he said as we sat in a cafe near the office. It's insane. The auditors will have a field day when they find there's no compliance function. That's assuming they find out, I replied. Raymond's probably planning to distribute our responsibilities across departments, making it look like everything's covered. Philip shook his head. Classic Shaw move. Remove the expertise. Keep up appearances. I leaned forward. Philip, I need a favor. Can you preserve the access log showing who modified our compliance documentation system over the past 3 years and the backup copies of the original documents? His eyes widened slightly. Carol, what are you planning? I'm planning to protect this company from Raymond's recklessness, I said simply. Will you help? He didn't hesitate. The logs will be in your email by end of day. Just be careful. Back at the office, I found an envelope on my desk. Inside was a termination agreement. In exchange for 2 months' severance pay, I would waive any right to dispute my termination and agree to a non-disclosure clause about company operations. The amount was insultingly small for someone of my tenure and position. This was Raymond's final humiliation, expecting me to sign away nearly 2 decades of service for a pittance. I placed the unsigned agreement in my drawer next to the recorder. Tomorrow I would present everything to Janine Brooks. The head of legal had always been professional with me, though we weren't close. But I knew her reputation for integrity. For the first time since Raymond's announcement, I allowed myself a small smile. He thought Wednesday would mark my end at Hollowgate. He was wrong. It would be his. Wednesday morning arrived with gloomy Seattle rain that matched the mood in our department. People moved quietly through their final tasks, occasionally stopping to exchange contact details or quiet words of encouragement. I had arranged a farewell lunch for later, but first I had my meeting with Janine. I arrived at her office at precisely 10 a.m., carrying a plain accordion folder. Her assistant nodded me in immediately. Janine Brooks was a formidable woman in her early 50s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her office was immaculate, with law degrees and professional certifications displayed on one wall and family photos on another. A reminder that she was both accomplished and human. Carol, she said, rising to shake my hand, I was sorry to hear about your department. These restructurings are never easy. Thank you, I replied, taking a seat across from her desk. But I'm not here to complain about the elimination of my position. Her eyebrow lifted slightly. What can I help you with then? I placed the folder on her desk, a compilation of 3 years' worth of documentation detailing systemic compliance violations orchestrated by Raymond Shaw. Initially, these were mere shortcuts, but they have escalated into serious breaches, including violations of data security laws, falsification of regulatory filings, and potential fraud. Janine's face remained impassive, though she straightened in her seat. Those are grave accusations. They're not accusations. They're documented facts, I replied, opening the folder. Inside were emails, memos, meeting notes, and audio recordings that evidenced Raymond's intentional breach of compliance protocols and falsification of documents. I presented the evidence systematically. Emails where Raymond instructed staff to bypass essential security measures, recordings of meetings where he ordered the backdating of compliance certificates, and documents with his signature on reports for reviews he hadn't conducted. As Janine examined each piece, her frown deepened. When she got to the section on client data handling violations, she looked up sharply. If this is true, we've been misrepresenting our security protocols to federal clients. That could be criminal. It is true, I confirmed. I've included the original requirements, Raymond's instructions to circumvent them, and proof of false certifications submitted to clients and regulators. She leaned back, tapping her pen on the desk. Why are you bringing this to me now, Carol? Why not sooner? It was a valid question. I attempted to address these issues internally first. I have documentation of 7 meetings with Raymond where I voiced my concerns. Each time he brushed them aside and increased pressure on my department. When that failed, he started excluding us from project reviews where we could have flagged violations. I paused before adding, I intended to bring this to you next month after our annual compliance audit. However, the disbanding of my department expedited the timeline. I see. Janine closed the folder and sat silently for a moment. You understand, I need to verify all of this. Of course, everything is organized by incident with corresponding documentation. The flash drive includes audio recordings and additional electronic evidence. Philip Johnson and IT Security can confirm the system log's authenticity. She nodded, then asked a question that took me by surprise. What do you want from this, Carol? My focus had been so intent on exposing Raymond that I hadn't fully considered my own desired outcome. I want the company to address these violations before they cause real harm. Some may need to be disclosed to clients or regulators. Meeting her gaze steadily, I added, above all, I want Raymond Shaw to be held accountable for risking Hollowgate to further his career. That's all? You're not seeking reinstatement or compensation? I shook my head. This isn't about my job. It's about doing what's right. Janine regarded me silently for a long moment. I'll need to take this to the CEO. Can you be available tomorrow morning? I'll be available, I replied. As I stood to leave, she added, Carol, please don't discuss this with anyone else for now, and thank you for bringing it to us instead of outside authorities. I nodded and left, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation. The process had begun. I spent the afternoon with my team at our farewell lunch, trying to focus on their concerns rather than my meeting with Janine. We gathered at Bailey's, a nearby restaurant, where we had celebrated many departmental milestones. The owner recognized us and offered a private room at no extra charge, a small kindness that nearly undid my composure. As we reminisced and promised to keep in touch, I felt a pang of guilt. These people had trusted me and followed my lead, and now their careers were uncertain. Even if my evidence led to action against Raymond, it wouldn't automatically restore their jobs. Thank you all, I said, raising my glass of iced tea. The work we've done has been meaningful, even if it wasn't always recognized. I'm proud of what we've accomplished together, and I have no doubt each of you will succeed elsewhere. Vivian wiped away a tear. It won't be the same without your leadership, Carol. You taught us that integrity matters, especially when it's inconvenient. I corrected her gently, and the group chuckled. After lunch, I returned to the office to finish clearing my desk. As I packed the last of my personal items, Raymond appeared in my doorway. All set to go, Carol? He asked, too cheerfully. I'll need your badge and company phone before you leave. I handed them over without comment. His smile faltered slightly at my calm compliance. Look, I know this is tough, but business decisions aren't personal. I've always respected your thoroughness. The condescension in his voice made my skin crawl, but I maintained my professional demeanor. Certainly, here is a rewritten version of the text. Naturally, Raymond, business is what it is. He nodded, seemingly satisfied that I was accepting my situation without protest. "Have you looked over the severance agreement?" he asked. "I have," I replied calmly. "I'll give you my response by tomorrow." Something in my tone must have caught his attention, as he squinted slightly. "The terms are standard, Carol," he warned. "It would be best not to prolong this." "I appreciate your concern," I said, closing up my box of personal items. "I'll be in touch." As I walked towards the elevator, I could feel his eyes on me. For the first time, there was a hint of doubt in his expression. Good. Let him wonder. I had just reached my car when a text came in from Philip. "FYI, RS accessed compliance systems after hours last night. Seems he was altering documents. All changes are logged as you requested." My heart sped up. While unexpected, it wasn't entirely surprising. Raymond was trying to cover his tracks, unaware that we had preserved the original records. His actions only strengthened our case against him. I texted back, "Thank you. Can you secure those logs right away?" He replied quickly, "Already done. Sent to your personal email with encryption. The key phrase is your favorite saying from our first meeting." I smiled, recalling when Philip and I first collaborated 8 years ago. I had told him, "We're not here to spoil the party. We're the ones ensuring everyone gets home safely afterward." That evening, I received another message, this time from Janine. "CEO reviewed initial evidence. Emergency board meeting scheduled for tomorrow at 9:01 a.m. Your presence is requested at 11 a.m. Confidential." As I prepared for bed, a final text came from Raymond himself. "Carol, let's meet for coffee tomorrow at 8 a.m. Need to discuss your transition package. Potential for improvement if we can align." So he was feeling the pressure. Perhaps he found out I met with Janine, or maybe he was just trying to ensure my silence. Either way, his timing was revealing. I texted back, "Unfortunately, I'm not available at 8. Happy to talk by phone." His reply was immediate. "Dinner then. My treat." "Sorry, prior commitment. I'll call you tomorrow afternoon." I turned off my phone, not waiting for his reply. Tomorrow would reveal Raymond Shaw's carefully maintained facade crumbling. On Thursday morning, I dressed meticulously. A charcoal suit reserved for significant presentations, my mother's pearl earrings, and a silk scarf in the signature blue of Hollowgate. If this was to be my last appearance at the company, I would do it with dignity. Janine called at 10:30 a.m. "The board is ready for you now. Can you come directly to the executive conference room on the 12th floor?" "I'm already in the building. I'll be right up." I had arrived early, sitting quietly in the lobby cafe where I could observe the comings and goings. I'd seen Raymond arrive at 7:45, looking unusually disheveled. At 8:30, 2 board members entered together, looking grim. By 9:15, the entire executive team had hurried in, skipping their usual coffee. As I ascended to the 12th floor, I took deep breaths to calm my racing heart. This wasn't about revenge, it was about accountability. The executive conference room was imposing, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the Seattle skyline, a massive polished walnut table, and 12 serious faces turned toward me as I entered. Raymond sat at the far end, pale. Beside him was Gerald Winters, the CEO, whose usually friendly demeanor was replaced with something much harder. "Miss Jennings, thank you for joining us," said Eleanor Richardson, the board chairwoman. "Please take a seat." I sat down in the empty chair directly across from Raymond. He avoided my gaze. "We've spent the morning reviewing the evidence you provided to Miss Brooks," Eleanor continued. "We've also heard Mr. Shaw's response to these allegations." Gerald leaned forward. "Before we proceed, I want to make it clear that we are handling this matter with the utmost seriousness. The board has authorized a full independent investigation." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "I appreciate that. What we need from you now," Eleanor said, "is to understand why you collected this evidence over 3 years without bringing it to the board or outside authorities." It was a fair question, but also defensive. They were worried about their own liability. "I initially raised these issues through the proper channels," I replied calmly. "I have documentation of multiple attempts to address compliance violations with Mr. Shaw directly. When that proved ineffective, I began documenting the issues more comprehensively." "That doesn't explain why you waited 3 years, pressed one of the board members. "Because I believed in this company and wanted to resolve the issues internally." I mentioned that I was building a solid case that couldn't just be brushed off as a misunderstanding or a mere difference in interpretation. Honestly, I had hoped Mr. Shaw would change his course before this drastic measure became necessary. Raymond finally broke the silence, his voice tense. This is clearly retaliatory. Carol's upset over losing her position. Actually, Janine interjected, the first documented evidence from Miss Jennings dates back nearly 3 years before any discussions about department cuts began. The electronic logs verify the timeline. Eleanor turned her attention back to me. Miss Jennings, considering what we've uncovered, we'd like to discuss your ongoing association with Hollowgate. I held her gaze firmly. With all due respect, Chairwoman, my concern isn't about my role. It's about upholding the company's integrity and safeguarding clients from these violations. Nonetheless, Gerald interrupted, we think it would be beneficial for everyone if you considered coming back to help us tackle these issues. Before I could reply, the door swung open, and a man in a sharp suit stepped in, nodding at Eleanor. This is Mr. Atkins from our external counsel, she explained. Given the potential legal ramifications, he'll be joining us. As Mr. Atkins settled into his seat, Raymond stood up abruptly. This is absurd. I've built this company's market position over the last 5 years, while compliance has been nothing but a financial drain. Sit down, Mr. Shaw, Eleanor said curtly. Your future with this company is very much uncertain right now. I watched as realization slowly dawned on Raymond's face. This wasn't a meeting about handling a troublesome employee. It marked the start of his downfall. A week after my board meeting, I was in Gerald Winter's office, going over the results from the independent investigation. The findings were even more incriminating than my original evidence suggested. Raymond's misconduct extended beyond my department, impacting product development, client contracts, and financial records. The board has terminated Raymond's employment, effective immediately, Gerald informed me. We've also self-reported the pertinent violations to regulatory authorities and started reaching out to affected clients. I nodded, feeling not victorious, but deeply relieved. That's the responsible course of action. We'd like you to lead our expanded compliance and ethics division, Gerald continued, with increased authority, direct reporting to the board, and a seat on the executive committee. The offer was everything I could have wanted professionally, yet I hesitated. What about my team? We're offering roles to all 15 members with expanded responsibilities and appropriate compensation adjustments, he reassured me. The board now sees that eliminating compliance was a short-sighted move. That's an understatement, I remarked. Gerald looked a bit embarrassed. I should have paid more attention to the concerns you raised over the years. I apologize for that. I weighed his offer carefully. The easy route would be to accept, return to the position I had built, and continue my work. But something had fundamentally shifted. I appreciate the offer, Gerald, but I need some time to think it over. The past week has been quite enlightening for me. He seemed surprised but nodded. Of course, the offer remains on the table. As I left his office, I passed Raymond's former space. Workers were already taking his name off the door. 3 executives who used to avoid eye contact now greeted me with smiles and nods. News had traveled fast. In the elevator, I checked my phone and saw 3 missed calls from executive recruiters and a text from Vivian. Team meeting at Bailey's at 5 p.m. Big news to share. I smiled. My team was already moving forward, with or without Hollowgate. As the elevator doors opened to the lobby, I realized I was moving forward too. 6 months later, I found myself speaking at the National Compliance Officers Conference in Dallas. My keynote address, Ethical Guardianship in the Age of Acceleration, had attracted a full house. Compliance isn't just about rules and regulations, I concluded. It's about fostering a culture where doing the right thing is the norm, not the exception, where integrity transcends department boundaries and becomes a shared value. The applause was gratifying, but even more so were the nodding heads of professionals who understood the daily struggles of maintaining standards in fast-paced, profit-driven environments. After my speech, during the reception, a young woman approached me. Miss Jennings, your story has been an inspiration to many of us. The way you upheld your principles, even at personal risk, is what our profession should embody. Thank you, I replied, touched by her sincerity. But remember, documentation without action is merely record-keeping. The real challenge is knowing when to act on the information you've gathered. She nodded earnestly. I'd love to learn more about your new consulting practice. After turning down Gerald's proposal at Hollowgate, I founded Jennings Integrity Advisors, a firm dedicated to helping businesses establish strong ethical standards beyond just ticking off compliance boxes. We've already secured clients in 4 states with more waiting in line. Surprisingly, Hollowgate became our largest client. Gerald enlisted our help to completely overhaul their compliance culture, with my former team acting as internal transformation partners. Meanwhile, Raymond didn't fare well. Regulatory probes following Hollowgate's self-disclosure uncovered similar issues at his previous jobs. His security professional certification was revoked, and he now faces possible civil penalties. Justice, I mused, may be slow, but it is inevitable. This new chapter of my life wasn't planned, but it feels right. I'm using my expertise to help others avoid the pitfalls I've seen firsthand. The insights gained over my 18 years at Hollowgate now underpin my work in helping other organizations foster cultures of integrity beyond mere compliance. Each company I guide becomes a place where employees can perform their duties without sacrificing their values, and where leaders learn that shortcuts eventually lead to longer, more costly journeys.